Okay, now we are going to go into the configuration of the DHCP. Here we go into add roles. Click here, we'll skip the page by default. Click next. Right, we have these that are already default ticked by default. We have active directory domain services. We have the DNS server installed. Right, and we're also going to highlight the DHCP server. Click next at this stage. Alright, this case we have the introduction to the DHCP server, which right, this is where we actually deal with the control of the IP addresses given to client servers within the domain. Click next. Alright, this was, as we had earlier in one of our earlier videos, this was the host IP address that we created. Click next. And as we can see, the falcon.com is the domain name that we created earlier, as well as the host IP address. Right, but validate. Click next. We have wins is not required for application on this network that is already highlighted. Click next. At this stage we add a scope. Scope name. Alright, we have a scope name here for the example we have given as general, but the scope range we have decided to go with is 192.168.0.3 starting to 192.168.0.10. Now mind you, this is just an example, so this would just limit you to a very small domain. Alright, the subnet mask as we said earlier, as well as the default gateway. Alright, we leave the option on the subnet type to wired. Click OK. So as we see, the name itself come out of the scope, as well as the scope range on IP address showing up now. Click next. We have enabled DHCP version 6. We switch to the disable DHCP version 6 mode for the server. We use current credentials, Falcon administrator. Alright, here we see all the factors that we discussed earlier, from the domain name to the scope name to the scope itself. Now it's going through the installation stage. Now you see the installation process has completed. As you can see higher up, installation succeeded. Close here. We're going into the domain itself. We see phoenix.falcon.com. Go to the address. We see here the scope range. the address leases, we see that there are no items to show in this view. And the scope options, as we can see, the router the IP address, as well as the DNS server and the domain, which is falcon.com, all being stored under the scope options. Alright, and this would bring the DHCP configuration to a close.